السلام عليكم. Welcome back to another episode of Quran Weekly, where we read the Quran, where we read the Quran in Arabic and discuss it in English. My name is Ahmad.
And my name is Safa.
We're happy to take you on another episode where we jump back into chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, which means it's the Last Supper, but in Arabic. Before we begin, we must always begin by explaining that we are not experts in the Arabic language. We are not experts in Quranic studies. We are merely learning and going on a journey of learning and discovery of the Quran, and we're hoping that you join us with you on this wonderful journey. The purpose of this series is to read and learn and see what we understand from it and share the process. So we encourage you to put in your comments. This is Romeo. Hi, Romeo. And we encourage you to share your thoughts, your opinions, your perspectives. This is an open space, and the more comments, the more discussion, the better that it is for us. So we're quite happy. Is there anything that you want to say before we get started?
No.
Then let's get straight into it. And as usual, we always begin with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, which means I seek refuge from God, and I ask God for I seek refuge from God from the devil. I don't know how the connotation works, but you're asking God to protect you from the devil, and in the name of God, who's most merciful and whose mercy is most encompassing. We always say that before we start reading Quran. But then off we go. Let me move this a little bit to the side. And there we go.
لتجدن أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود والذين أشركوا ولتجدن أقربهم مودة للذين آمنوا الذين قالوا إنا نصارى ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبانا وأنهم لا يستكبرون.
Okay, beautiful verse to start with. You will find that the strongest of the people, or the most intense of people in enmity, in hatred, in animosity as enemies, are those who believe amanu al-Yahud.
The Jews.
The Jews.
The Jews are the biggest enemies to the believers.
To the believers. And those who are polytheists, the people who believe in multiple gods. And you will find that the nearest of them in affection, or the closest in affection, are the ones who believe in those that they say that we are Christians. Nasara is the word for Christians.
So the Christians are the closest or the most loving to the believers.
Yeah. And that is because among them are priests and monks, and that they are not arrogant.
So in a way, it says that among them are priests and monks who know the message that was delivered by Jesus.
Yeah.
And
that they do not.
They believe in God, so they are humble, like they're not arrogant.
Yeah. Which I think here it talks about a key difference between Judaism and Christianity.
Yeah.
And that I think from the Islamic perspective, the biggest flaw of Judaism is that they believe that only them are the chosen people and only them will be given heaven and salvation, whereas the Christians don't have that same arrogance and that same perspective. The Christians are a little bit more, anyone who believes, anyone who wants to have the faith is welcome. So, yeah, strong words, but yeah, it is the case. Anything you want to add?
وإذا سمعوا ما أنزل إلى الرسول ترى أعينهم تفيض من الدمع مما عرفوا من الحق يقولون ربنا آمنا فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين.
beautiful. I think it's a continuation of the Christians.
Yeah.
And it says, and when they listen or they hear from what has been revealed to the messenger, you see their eyes are overflowing with tears for what they recognized of truth. So they heard the truth and their hearts made them cry and made them such awe and reverence that they kind of cried out of like believing and hearing the true message. And they say, "Our Lord, we have believed, so write us in with the witnesses." And it's a very beautiful description of someone who believes and is seeing the true message and how powerful their heart can relate. I don't know if I should be sharing the story, but when I had my messenger mania, let's just say, there was somebody that I was speaking to online and I was telling them my story, and they were just like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that I want to cry." Like I've heard that expression before, and it was such a welcome, and that's kind of like it's a beautiful reunion of like it's recognizing that you always had somebody in your life that believes in the same thing that you believe, and it moves them so much. It's such a powerful description of shared faith, of shared humanity. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I love it. It's very powerful. And again, it strikes to the what we've been hearing in this chapter so far, which is that Christians, Jews, and Muslims all have share the same faith, they share the same source, they share the same truth, and we really should come together, and it will bring us collective joy if we believe with each other. Beautiful.
وما لنا لا نؤمن بالله وما جاءنا من الحق ونطمع أن يدخلنا ربنا مع القوم الصالحين.
Yeah, so continuation, and they're saying, and what is it for us to not believe in God and what has come to us from truth? And we hope that he enters us or admits us in our Lord with the people that are the righteous. So when you hear the truth, you hear the call, you kind of feel that, it's how can we not believe in God, and how can we not, and we hope that he pulls us in to be one of the righteous. And I do also use the male pronoun he for God, but in Arabic, if you use the male pronoun, it can mean male or female. It doesn't specify. If you use the female pronoun, it specifies that it's a female. So I'm not saying he as in God and trying to make it more in the masculine sense, but he as in the and not androgynous, but the kind of non-specific gender term that they use in the Arabic language.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that in these verses it's speaking about Christians. It makes a big similarity between Christians and Muslims, and in a way it puts them in the same group.
Yeah.
That they believe in the same message.
Yeah. And that in the end of the day, the only group that matters is the group of the righteous, the company of the righteous. If you do good, you are all a part of the same group.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
فأثابهم الله بما قالوا جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وذلك جزاء المحسنين.
Continuing about the talk of Christians again and seeing the very clear message. So God rewarded them for what they have said, and he rewarded them with gardens that flow from underneath them the rivers, so very fertile gardens, forever fertile gardens, and they will abide in it forever in it, and that is a reward for the good doers. Now here you're not seeing that it's the Muslims or the Christians or the Jews, it's just the people who do good will get rewarded for their belief, for their piety, for their glory. Beautiful.
والذين كفروا وكذبوا بآياتنا أولئك أصحاب الجحيم.
And hand in hand, whenever there's a mention of heaven, there's a mention of hell. Whenever there's a mention of hell, there's a mention of heaven. So those that disbelieved and denied our signs, our verses, those are the ones that are the companions of hellfire. So, yeah, believe in what has been brought before you, and you get rewarded. Disbelieve and deny, and you get the punishment, unfortunately.
Yeah. But here I think, like, because a lot of Christians also do not believe in the verses of the Quran, I think. So I'm not sure if it's talking about all Christians or just the Christians who also believe in this message.
I mean, the main message that I'm getting from these is if you do good and believe, then that's the criteria to get into heaven. So I understand that there are some differences, there are some disagreements, but I still believe that all of, like, I still believe that even the Christians that have a different view would also, as long as they do good and they try to spread goodness, and they're getting rewarded according to these verses, as far as I understand.
And then we saw also the last time the verse that says, for Jews, Christians, Muslims, Sabians, all those who believe in God and do good,
they will get their reward.
They will get a reward for it, yes.
Yeah.
So here actually, I think the confusion came from ayatina, because ayatina can be verses or it can be signs.
Yeah.
So I think it's not really referring to verses. It's more of signs or revelations.
Yeah. And you never know what revelations are coming around the corner.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تحرموا طيبات ما أحل الله لكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين.
Now this is a verse that I particularly like. It says, O you of those who believe, do not make unlawful the good things of what has been made lawful by God for you. And do not transgress, because indeed God does not like the transgressors. And this is, I think, a problem that I've seen in Muslim societies time and time again, where a lot of people are saying this is forbidden and this is forbidden and that's forbidden and you're not supposed to do this and you're not supposed to do that. And the more that we read the Quran, the more that we realize it's about tolerance and acceptance and freedom, and like there's a lot of really warped views of perspectives of what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, that aren't explicitly mentioned in the Quran. And this verse talks specifically to that, saying, "Oh, those of you who believe, do not make unlawful the good things of what has been made lawful by God." Obviously, this is also open to interpretation of what has been made lawful versus not. But generally, from my understanding, is don't transgress. Don't overstep your boundaries. Don't tell people that you have to do this or you don't have to do this because of our understanding of the text.
Yeah, and I think also it's that a lot of things are not very clear, and maybe this is also in a way that you're allowed to do that. So a lot of things, there is no specific verse that says don't do this. So if it's not really mentioned, don't do this, then just that's okay. But people tend to make everything like this is wrong, this is wrong, right, this is wrong, you'll go to hell. They tend to exaggerate
and similarly, there are a lot of verses that specifically say don't do this and don't do that. So there, it's like very clear. When God wants to be clear, God is clear. And if He's not being clear, then don't force people.
Don't make it harder on yourself. I think this means just don't make it harder on yourself. There are so many good things in life. Don't try to make everything wrong and unlawful. And the one thing that is very clear here is don't transgress. This is very clear. You shouldn't do that.
And I like the word transgress because it means like to go over the boundary of what makes sense or what's reasonable. Don't go out of your way to
and also don't like transgress over other people.
Don't impose on somebody else and
or attack someone.
Powerful words.
وكلوا مما رزقكم الله حلالا طيبا
this is an interesting one. It says, and eat from what has been provided to you for God lawfully and in good, and be mindful or fear God, the one that you are in Him believing. There is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of confusion. For instance, like gambling and alcohol is mentioned in multiple times in the Quran that they're the works of the devil.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily mentioned that this was unlawful. What has been explicitly mentioned unlawful is pork, is the dead of the meat. حرم عليكم الخنزير.
Yeah.
The pork, meat that died before you, meat that has or blood from animals. That has been very specifically and explicitly mentioned. What is not lawful for you to eat.
But I definitely heard people who say that alcohol is not lawful.
A lot of people say that, but the Quran doesn't say حرم عليكم الخمر.
Yeah, and this is why it makes it like a bit controversial, because it's open to interpretations.
Yeah.
I think like the way it's written, like there are so many interpretations for any verse and any specific topic. So this is why it's a bit controversial.
Yeah.
And I think this is why you should read it for yourself and take your own meanings, not hear someone else talking and making things up.
Or join us along this journey of discovery and see how it goes. But yeah, so that's why it's just for me, the very specifically pork, dead meat, talons and fangs. There's like a verse in the Quran that speaks specifically about that. So anything that's not that has been made lawful for you to eat. So therefore, there's a lot in the world that you can enjoy.
Yeah. I think in this chapter there was a verse where it was mentioned all the foods you should not eat.
Was it this one as well?
I think so. I think we read it last time, probably.
For the Quran, religious capitalism. All right. Well, I'm not gonna get into it. I think let's just keep it as it is.
لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم بما عقدتم الأيمان فكفارته إطعام 10 مساكين من أوسط ما تطعمون أهليكم أو كسوتهم أو تحرير رقبة فمن لم يجد فصيام 3 أيام ذلك كفارة أيمانكم إذا حلفتم واحفظوا أيمانكم كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تشكرون.
Interesting verse. God does not call you to take account for the thoughtless utterances of your faiths or your oaths, things that are said kind of without full intent, things that are said kind of like, oh yeah, I'll do it. However, he calls you to account for what you have contracted with the oath, like when you said...
When you really mean it.
When you really mean it and you said an oath, then God will hold you accountable. And it's expiation. Expiation is to kind of to the recompense, the way that you kind of fix breaking an oath that's serious, is by feeding 10 needy people from the average of what you feed your families, or clothing them, or freeing a slave. It says here freeing a neck. The expression is and to release a neck. But whoever does not find that, whoever is not capable of doing that, then they should fast for 3 days. That is an expiation, a good way to undo the broken oath of your oaths. Indeed, when you have sworn, and here it tells you to guard your oaths, thus makes it clear for God to you his verses so that you may be grateful. So here we see a lot of importance and focus on oaths and breaking your oaths and delivering on your oaths, and how do you kind of make up for breaking from your oaths. And I think it's very powerful. And God makes a distinction between like the things that you just say, whether it's like, oh yeah, I'll be there Monday or whatever, versus the I'm going to be there for you I'm going to make a limit that's possible. Yeah, you're very clear about how you should treat your oaths, and our word is our bond.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون.
Amazing. We just talk about it and it shows up. This is exactly the verse that I was talking about, and several verses we find this throughout the Quran. But it says, "O you of those who believe, verily intoxicants, the gambling, games of chance, and the sacrifices at altars, and the divining arrows are an abomination from the work abomination from the work of the devil. So avoid it so that you may be successful."
Yeah.
And here again, this is what we're talking about: lawful versus unlawful. God doesn't tell you that drinking, gambling, sacrificing, or divination are unlawful or forbidden, but it just tells you that these are the works of the devil. So if you go down this path, you're going to be unsuccessful, and if you avoid it, then you may be successful.
Yeah, but some people say, some scholars say that when it says avoid it, that's making it unlawful.
Yeah.
Like avoid it, like completely stay away from it. So this is why I'm saying it's like it depends on how you read it and how you interpret it. But definitely some people think that like when it says avoid it, that means just this is unlawful, just stay away from it. Stay as far as you can.
I kind of want to find that 5:3.
Yeah, this is the verse we read.
I just
the
want to do it.
beginning of Surah Al-Ma'idah.
Yeah, I just want to do the conforms.
حرمت عليكم. So the word here is like it was made unlawful.
Made unlawful
yes.
for you the dead animals and the blood and the flesh of swine. So here.
Yeah, and so many things like.
Yeah, and what has been dedicated to other than God, and which is strangled to death, and so there's like a big list. But it starts with saying are made unlawful. And so for me, there is a very clear distinction between the two. There is a distinction between this is made unlawful and this is going to cause you damage if you do it, but avoid it if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a year sober so far, and I can tell you the choices that I make, the health that I feel, the clarity of thought,
Much better, of course.
I don't regret my decisions. Sometimes I make choices and I'm like, okay, I'm not so sure about it. But at the end of the day, I am so much happier because I'm like avoiding all these things. I don't know if I'm going to avoid them forever because the idea was to do a year sober, but I can just tell you that the benefits of it is just unbelievable. And then I can also see now from an outside perspective, because I go to like bars with friends and they're drinking, and I can see them making poor decisions.
Yeah.
And I can see them suffering from as a result of it. So like it's weird, but it's advice, not a law. I think there's for me, avoid it so that you may be successful. And successful is a very powerful explanation because it doesn't mean anything specifically, but it means everything in a weird way.
Yeah.
إنما يريد الشيطان أن يوقع بينكم العداوة والبغضاء في الخمر والميسر ويصدكم عن ذكر الله وعن الصلاة فهل أنتم منتهون.
Okay. Beautiful, and we can dive into it some more. The devil, the shaitan, the devil only intends to cause between you enmity and hatred through intoxicants, through gambling, and to hinder you from the remembrance of God and from prayer. So are you the ones that abstain?
Are you going to abstain from these?
Yeah. And this is kind of like very real, very powerful. I used to smoke weed, and I used to smoke weed daily. And now that I've been sober for a while and I've been praying 5 times a day, even thinking about going back to using intoxicants next year, I go like, okay, well then now do I have to do intoxicants only after the last prayer? Because I don't want to miss my prayers, because if you smoke you can't pray. And I'm like, okay, it really is this or that. Like you can't have both.
Yes.
So it's kind of very powerful. So again, here it's saying, so will you abstain? And I feel like the question isn't you have to abstain. It's not a command by God. It's a question.
Yeah.
The choice always comes back to the individual. You can allow these things to come into your life, or you can not. For me, it's very clear that it is not forbidden, but it is highly recommended. Here are the consequences. Hinder you from prayer and from God. Yeah, powerful.
وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول واحذروا فإن توليتم فاعلموا أنما على رسولنا البلاغ المبين ليس
And obey God and obey the messenger, and beware if you turn away, then know that only upon the messenger is to convey the message clearly. It is not the messenger's responsibility whether or not you listen and you take it on and you do what the messenger says. The messenger's responsibility is only to communicate what the lawful and what the unlawful is, and it's up to you to listen or to follow or to walk away.
ليس على الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جناح فيما طعموا إذا ما اتقوا وآمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ثم اتقوا وآمنوا ثم اتقوا وأحسنوا والله يحب المحسنين.
Okay, I did a bit of a switch, so I didn't really focus. It's not for those who believe and do good any sin for what they ate.
Before the message, meaning what they have consumed before this was revealed, like before the prohibition.
But I get that that's what the translation is saying, but I don't think that's what the verse is saying. ليس لهم صالحات جناح فيما طعموا إذا ما, and then let's continue maybe. And if what they fear and they believed and they do good, then they fear God and believed, then they fear God and do good. God loves the good doers. I'm a little confused.
It means like what they did before, I think.
I that's what obviously the translation here.
But also this is in like past tense, I think. I think this is why it's understood like this.
But then why is he saying, and then feared God and believed, and then did good, and then feared God and believed, and then feared God, and then did good? Why is it repeating it 3 times?
ليس الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات جناح فيما طعموا إذا ما اتقوا وآمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ثم اتقوا وآمنوا ثم اتقوا وأحسنوا والله يحب المحسنين.
I don't get why it's repeated 3 times. For me, it sounds like a person who's going back and forth between doing good, fearing God, and then failing, and then doing good and fearing God, and then failing, and then doing good and fearing God, and then failing. But it doesn't specifically say failing. It just says, why would you have to repeat it 3 times? So I think this means that the way that I understand this is that it means, going through this journey of like learning and discovering and trying again and doing again, even if you don't succeed. Like, I feel like this talks about the trial and error and the trial and error and the trial and error, and that doesn't mean that you get it right the first time, or doesn't mean that if it takes you several times to get it is bad. because God keeps trying. God appreciates those that continue to be mindful and do good. Yeah, at least that's what I understand from it.
I think maybe it's also like stages, like they first believe and then they believe and they mind God and then they believe and do good.
Yeah.
So I see like there are 3 different words used. إذا ما اتقوا آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات ثم اتقوا وآمنوا ثم اتقوا وأحسنوا.
Oh, so they feared God. Well, they believed and they did good deeds. They feared God and they believed, and then they feared God and they did good.
I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm.
Can we click on tafsir? I wonder what happens. Meaning of ansab in Islam. Hadith that prohibits khamr. So Imam Ahmad recorded Abu Huraira saying there were 3 stages to prohibiting khamr. When the Messenger of God migrated to Medina, the people were consuming alcohol and gambles to ask God about these things. Allah revealed. Yeah, there's a lot of revelations about alcohol, and there's obviously a lot of history to
Yeah, you can you open again the tafsir?
Sure.
This is 93. From 590 to 593. Here. Those who believe and do righteous good deeds, there is no sin on them for what they ate. Yeah, I think the reason why they explain it this way is because this is in the past.
tense. Yeah.
And لو حرم عليهم لتركوه كما ترى. So many ahadith.
Yeah.
We can try with the here 593. Yeah, scholars have said that there are several degrees of taqwa. Similarly, the degrees of faith and belief are also different in terms of personal strength and weakness. This is also something that I thought could be possible.
Yeah.
The more one progresses in the remembrance of Allah, concern for the life here and hereafter, good deeds and jihad, the more filled his heart is with the fear of Allah and awe. Thus there are degrees of one's ascent onto the pathways of Allah. The considered repetition in verse 93 of the basis of taqwa and iman is a pointer in this direction. Yeah, and I think it makes sense that there are like different levels
of belief,
and then you're like going
further and further.
Finally, at the end of the verse, what stands identified is the seeker's last station, which is ihsan. This is why the last word is different from all the previous words. Righteousness at its best.
Yeah. And the reward for it too, which is the love for Allah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. So that it's like different levels of belief and kind of working and doing better and believing and getting higher. First they do good and do good deeds, then they feared and they believed. So even though they believed here, but like they like firmly believed, and then they do. And ahsanu is not just do good, but they like excelled.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a higher level of it. Okay. Cool. Okay, interesting. It says, "O you of those who believe, surely God will test you through something from the game that you hunt, that you can reach it in your hands and your spears. And God will make evidence who fears him in the unseen, and whoever transgresses. After that, then for him is a punishment that is painful." I don't understand this. Test you with the game.
Here in the interpretation I'm looking at, it says that this is during pilgrimage.
Oh, okay.
That there are some animals that you shouldn't hunt during pilgrimage. Yeah. But in the verse itself, I think it doesn't mention pilgrimage specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the next verse it does.
Okay.
In the next verse it does, yeah.
Okay, so maybe it explains in this verse. Okay. So here it says, "Oh, these of you who believe, do not kill the game or do not hunt while you are ihram or you are on your pilgrimage. And whoever killed it from amongst you intentionally, then the penalty is similar to that he killed from the cattle, judging with it. And 2 men will have to judge with it, 2 men with justice from you as an offering. And the judgment is as an offering reaching the Kaaba."
That you that the punishment for this, or to compensate for this, 2 men should judge like how much it's worth.
Oh, as an offering
like,
to give.
Whatever you hunted, like a statue, 2 men should judge like
how much is
equivalent to it, and then you give that to the poor by the Kaaba.
Yeah, you give that to the poor, to the Kaaba, or they give an expiation of feeding the poor, the needy people, again by judgment of the 2 men.
Yeah.
Or the equivalent of that for in fasting, so that they may test the consequence of their deeds. Pardon from God what has passed, but whoever returns to doing the same transgression, then God will take retribution from him, and God is Almighty, the owner of retribution. So if you do it once, there's a judgment. If you do it twice, God will take matters into his own hands. Interesting.
حل لكم صيد البحر وطعامه متاعا لكم وللسيارة وحرم عليكم صيد البر ما دمتم حرما واتقوا الله الذي إليه تحشرون.
Okay, and here we see what's been made lawful. It's been made lawful for you to the game of the sea, so fishing, eating seafood, and its foods, and its provisions, and for you and for the travelers. And it has been made unlawful for you the game of the land, as long as you remain in ihram, doing the pilgrimage, and be conscious of God, the one to him you will be gathered. So here it's a bit of repetition and kind of a bit of an openness to why seafood is lawful for everybody. Interesting. on to the next section.
جعل الله الكعبة البيت الحرام قياما للناس والشهر الحرام والهدي والقلائد ذلك لتعلموا أن الله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأن الله بكل شيء عليم.
Interesting. It says God has made the Kaaba, the sacred mosque, not the mosque, but the sacred house within the mosque, in the house of
the sacred house. Is it called the sacred house in English?
I don't know. It's a place of worship. It's the cube in Arabic. It's a
Kaaba.
sacred building, elegantly draped in silk and
In
cloth and
Mecca.
veil, located in Mecca.
Yeah, maybe you can show a picture or something if someone doesn't know Kaaba.
Yeah, this is what the Kaaba looks like. And this is where Muslims go for the pilgrimage. And hopefully where I'll go this year. I might go
really?
Umrah with my sister and my mom. That's the plan.
Nice.
So I'm hoping for...
I went once. It's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I'm looking for... Have you done Hajj yet?
No.
But so yeah, so God made Al-Kaaba and the house and the sacred house an establishment for people and for the months of the sacred months, Al-Haram, the months, and for the animals offering and their garlands. Wal-Huda wal-Qala'id.
Hinti, it's like what people give to the Kaaba. Apparently, this is something that was being done back in the days. That they used to bring animals offerings for the Kaaba.
Yeah, which means it goes for the poor or the needy.
Yeah, and al-qala'id is like what they used to put around the necks of the animals to show that it is for the Kaaba,
sacrifice. Okay.
for the sacrifices.
Yeah, and that is so that you may know that indeed God knows what is in the heavens and what is in the earth, and that God is of everything all-knowing. So this is a bit interesting. Why is it talking about God's knowledge as a result of making the Kaaba as a sanctuary for well-being for people, along with the sacred months and the sacrificial animals? I don't get the connection.
Yeah.
Mention 4 things: cause of constancy, survival, tranquility for people. First, Kaaba is in a place of the square. Another house is made by the tribe of Qatham of the same name. This is Al-Kaaba al-Yamaniya, to be exact, to distinguish between Baytullah, house of God. There was the words Bayt al-Haram, the sacred house, were added to the name of Kaaba. The word Qiyam and Qiwam are verses. Baytullah means universe. Even the worst person around the world would not hurt him in any way. So then, but the one would say that to even be a sworn enemy if he was in condition. I don't know. I don't get it. And we can dive into the explanations now, but I think it would be a bit too...
It will be too long, yes,
Too long.
to read now.
Yeah.
But
But the one thing that we do read in this is that it is a sanctuary for all people.
yeah.
And this is something that has withstood this test of time. Saudi/Mecca was never conquered, never taken by anybody, which I think is a powerful phrase. And I think here, reverting back to God's knowledge, is that how does God know that this is a sacred space? It's interesting that he says God knows rather than God does.
Yeah.
So it's like it's something about the space is holy, and it was made this way, and it's more tied to knowledge.
Maybe it's like God knows if you do not keep the sanctity of this place and the sanctity of the months, of the sacred months.
Yeah, so God knows everything. Okay, because here it's talking about,
that these are sacred and these are like, you shouldn't transgress during these months or at this place.
Yeah.
And God is all knowing of everything, so don't try to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe it can be
Yeah. Fair.
اعلموا أن الله شديد العقاب وأن الله غفور رحيم.
Yeah, here you see the duality of God. Know that indeed God is severe in punishment or torment, and that God is oft forgiving and most merciful. That both are true.
Yeah.
So that's why ittaqullah, be mindful of God. It says fear God, but being mindful of God is always the key. God brings the balance to this world.
ما على الرسول إلا البلاغ والله يعلم ما تبدون وما تكتمون.
Back to God's knowledge. It is not for the messenger except to convey the message of God, and God knows what you reveal and what you conceal. So this is all tied into what you do, and that God is always watching. So it's not the messenger's job to herd you. It's God's job to watch out for it, and God knows everything. Which I kind of like. It reminds me of the story or the way that the Christians believe that Jesus is a shepherd guiding his people. And I like the metaphor of it. I think of it. But a shepherd is more responsible for what the sheep do. Whereas here it's saying the messenger's duty is not to be responsible for you, but just to convey the message. And God
just guide too.
Yeah.
And Muhammad was a shepherd too.
Yeah?
That was his job, I think so,
Should I become a shepherd?
Yeah, I think that it was actually like, it was remarkable that most of the prophets, or a lot of the prophets, were shepherds. Because in a way people are kind of like shepherds.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Sheep. Yeah. It's amazing.
I think it's, But here it says that indeed the messenger is just here to deliver the message.
To convey the message.
To convey messages.
Yeah.
قل لا يستوي الخبيث والطيب ولو أعجبك كثرة الخبيث فاتقوا الله يا أولي الألباب لعلكم تفلحون.
All right, back to making the choice between doing good or doing evil. Say that they're not equal, the evil and the good, even though it impresses you the abundance of evil. And this you can kind of understand from capitalism, from greed, from like even from like gambling, from getting more money, even though the reward is tempting, they are not equal. Good and evil are not equal. So be mindful of God, O men of understanding, so that you may be successful.
Yeah, and I think it also says that the evil is more than the good. Like, good and evil are not equal. And then it says, even if you like the abundance of evil, in a way it also means like evil is more abundant than good.
Yeah.
And I think we can see that in the world today, that definitely evil is more.
The way that I understand it isn't that evil is more, but that the temptation for evil is more. The surrounding people who kind of the reward of evil seems to be good. Like if I'm selfish, or if I steal, or if I take more for me and take less for you, it feels like you're getting more. But that's for me, it's an illusion. It's not really that evil is more. It just seems like evil is more. And it seems like you get more by doing evil.
Yeah, I agree. It seems more. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not more,
Yeah.
but it seems more. And definitely, it seems like if you do evil, then
You
this
get
is
more
the shorter path
path to
to
more for
getting
yourself.
more
Yeah.
rewards or getting something good.
Yeah. Which I think kind of like talks about the human condition. And that it's easy to lie, it's easy to cheat,
Yeah.
it's easy to steal.
It's much easier than trying to be good all the time.
Yeah.
It's much easier to be like, to do the.
Especially when life gets hard. When
Yeah.
you think life is hard for me, I should just take more for myself. Because why should life be this hard? But doing good. And for me, the not equal or the good and evil, for me, I see good as being more of a reward, even though it seems like evil looks like it's more of a reward. So
Yeah.
it's that weird duality of the two, which is kind of
Yeah, and in a way, everyone who does something wrong, I think in the back of their heads, they're thinking like everyone is doing it anyway.
yeah,
Like, this is why I also can relate it a bit to the abundance of evil. Because
Yeah.
I think that always, whoever does something that's not good, they justify it by saying everyone is doing the same.
Everyone's
So
doing
why
it.
shouldn't
Why shouldn't
I?
I? Yeah, yeah. Yep.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تسألوا عن أشياء إن تبد لكم تسؤكم وإن تسألوا عنها حين ينزل القرآن تبد لكم عفى الله عنها والله غفور حليم.
Okay, bit of a complicated verse.
Yeah.
O you of who believe, do not ask about the things that have been made clear to you.
Have been made if that the things that if were made clear
If
to
made
you
clear to you,
may
distress
you.
Yeah, make you
Yes.
stressful. And if you ask about it when it has been revealed in the Quran, it may be made clear to you that it has been pardoned by God about it, and indeed God is oft forgiving and forbearing. This is very interesting. So, I mean, here it's talking about a matter which, if made clear to you, may disturb you, but if you inquire about what is revealed in the Quran, it has been made very clear to you.
Yeah.
God is oft forgiving in doing in the past, and God is the most forgiving and forbearing. So, again, I don't want to get into too controversial topics with this concept, but there's been a lot of things that people say this is wrong or this is not right or this is unlawful and this is this, and then you look at the Quran, and the Quran has
it's not really mentioned.
it's not
clearly.
mentioning it, and it's talking about God's forgiveness and his openness and that it's been pardoned.
Yeah,
So
and at the beginning it says don't ask about things that if revealed to you may distress you.
Distress you.
So maybe also it means like there are certain things that you just don't need to ask about,
Maybe.
or I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, again, here for me, the focus is about what's been pardoned by God, and that God is oft forgiving and forbearing.
Yeah, and it also it relates to what we talked about earlier, that there are certain things that are not really made clear. It's kind of merciful from God that it's not clear. So don't try to
force it.
Yeah, don't try to make things more difficult on yourselves, I think.
Yeah.
By saying this is unlawful and this is wrong and this is right. So if there is something that's just not very clear in the verses if it's right or wrong, I think then the more merciful opinion would be to just assume it's good. Just assume it's okay. As long as it's not mentioned clearly, don't do that. Then I think maybe that's what that's the message here.
Don't make unlawful what is not necessarily there in the Quran.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, and the ending of the verse is that God is all forgiving.
Yeah, all forgiving and all forbearing,
and like patient.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
These are also very beautiful
Descriptions of
descriptions and qualities, like to be forgiving and patient.
Yeah. Yeah.
قد سألها قوم من قبلكم ثم أصبحوا بها كافرين.
Okay, so this gives us a little bit more understanding.
Yeah.
So the things that you're asking that don't have answers to, indeed, people from before you have asked them. People from before you have asked those questions, and then they became thereby disbelievers.
Because they didn't follow what was revealed to them.
Yeah.
Like people before you have asked the same questions, and then after the answer was given, they didn't believe in it, or they didn't follow it.
Yeah.
So like it's better not to have not to have a revelation about something and then
not believe in.
not follow it.
Yeah.
So it's better not to know about it then, you know,
Yeah.
like if you don't know, then you don't know, and it's fine, but it's
Yeah.
better than knowing and then disbelieving or not following, I think.
Because you don't like the answer, because
Yes.
you don't like what
Yes.
the perspective is. Yeah, I think this is powerful. But
Yeah, I think it's talking here about the people before the message of Muhammad. Like there were so many different prophets who came with different answers.
Yeah, and sometimes there are people who didn't like the answers.
Exactly.
And that's why they denied them. And denying because you don't like the answer is worse than not asking in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe God is making things easier by not putting like strict rules on certain things, I think.
Yeah. Even if you don't like it.
ما جعل الله من بحيرة ولا سائبة ولا وصيلة ولا حام ولكن الذين كفروا يفترون على الله الكذب وأكثرهم لا يعقلون.
Alright, these are terms that I am not familiar with.
Yeah, me neither, but I have here the meanings.
God did not make of Bahira wala Sa'iba, and not Sa'iba, and not Wasila, and not Hami.
Yeah, it means that God didn't make these things unlawful, and these things are Bahira was if An-Naqa,
the camel.
If the camel had 5 children, and then the last one was a male, they used to cut its ear and then made it unlawful to ride it.
Wow.
And they called it Bahira, meaning Bahira is like with cut ear. I think it relates to like all the superstitious things that people used to do at that time.
Okay.
And then the second one is
Sa'iba.
Sa'iba. كان الرجل منهم يقول إذا قدمت من السفر أبرأت من مرضي. So they used to say, like a man used to say, if I came back from travel or I was sick and then I was cured, then my camel is Sa'iba.
Okay.
And then they made it like Bahira, so they were not allowed to ride it, and they didn't use it for like what they usually use it for. Okay. So they made it unlawful for them to use this camel anymore.
Yeah.
Which is also very superstitious.
Yeah.
And then the last one is Wasila.
Well, the last two. Wasila and then...
Wasila is like when El-Shay, which is like not the camel, but El-Maza, I think. Maza is like... No.
Is it another animal that they ride?
It's another animal that you can eat and ride. So if it gave birth to a female, they kept it, and if they it gave birth to a male, they made it like an idol or like a god in a way.
Okay.
And then if it gave birth to a male and female, they didn't slaughter the male because they are like more sacred now, and then they call the female wasila. So all like very superstitious practices of that time.
Yeah, and here it's saying God did not make ما جعل الله من, God did not make any of these superstitious beliefs.
Yes.
But those that disbelieved, they invent against God lies, and most of them do not use reason.
Yeah.
So here it's talking about the superstitions that you do. And I think this is like very powerful. It's the theme of today's verses, is that making something, saying that God made something unlawful because of our tradition rather than because of what God has said.
Yes.
Yeah. And most of them do not use reason. They lack understanding.
وإذا قيل لهم تعالوا إلى ما أنزل الله وإلى الرسول قالوا حسبنا ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعلمون شيئا ولا يهتدون.
Yeah, and this is a problem that we see even today. And when there's said to them, come to what has been revealed by God and to the messenger, they said, it's sufficient for us what we have found upon it, our forefathers and our traditions, even though that their forefathers did not know anything and were not guided. I mean, very clear.
You just follow your ancestors, even though they didn't know anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, and we see this unfortunately today. Even.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, our society says this is lawful, this is not lawful, therefore this is lawful and this is not lawful, whereas this is not what God has said, this is not what God has revealed.
Yeah, and all these people didn't know much.
Yeah. They know nothing.
Yeah.
They don't know anything, and they are not guided. Very clear.
Yeah.
Thanks, God.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم أنفسكم لا يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون.
O you of those who believe, upon you and upon yourselves, do not, لا يضركم, it will not harm you from those who have gone astray when you have been guided. It will not harm you if someone chooses to deviate, even though as long as you are rightly guided. So you're not hurt by somebody else disbelieving or moving away.
Yeah.
To God is your return, all of you, so He will inform you with what you used to do. So here, yeah, I think a big problem that we see in religion is that people like try to force you to believe, or force their families, or force their kids.
Yeah.
And even in chapter 2, it says there's no forcing in religion. You can't force someone into religion, and this kind of zeroes in on that idea and focuses and says you're only accountable for yourself. It will not harm you if somebody else chooses to deviate, as long as you are rightly guided. Just focus on yourself, do good. Don't force somebody else to do something. And God will bring you all to Him, and He will inform you of what you used to do. So very clear, very straightforward.
اثنان ذوى عدل منكم أو آخران من غيركم إن أنتم ضربتم في الأرض فأصابتكم مصيبة الموت تحبسونهما
Okay. Interesting verse. O ye of those who believe, take testimony between you if approaches one of you death, if death is approaching one of you, at the time of making the will, then take two of the people of men. It doesn't say men. It just says two of those that are just. ذو العدل. اثنان ذو العدل. Two that are
just people.
Two just people. Among you, or two others from other than you.
So it's like what's explained here. It's either two of your relatives or two from two or just two people.
Yeah, the way that I understood it, maybe
not close to you.
Yeah, it could be also like your tribe versus not your tribe.
It can also be that. Yes.
Yeah. And if you ضربتم, which we had the wonderful expression in the previous one, which the big stress was ضربتم means to strike, but it also means if you are traveling.
Yeah.
And اضربوهن from the previous verse from chapter women is to create some distance. So if you are creating distance, or if you're traveling in the earth and then befalls you a calamity of death, detain both of them from after that.
After the prayer.
From after the prayer. So that let them both swear. I mean, detain is a bit of a strong word, but interesting. Yeah. But let them both swear by God, and if you doubt anything, then do not exchange for it a price. So if you doubt what they're saying, then don't give them a price. And even if he is a near relative, and do not conceal the testimony of God. Indeed, we are for surely be this. Indeed, if you do, then we will surely be of the sinners. So you're talking about wills and how you kind of maintain.
I will.
Yeah. Powerful, but complicated. So believers, when death approaches some of you, call two people, two justful people to witness your request. Otherwise, to non-Muslims. I also kind of got this concept of like Muslims versus non-Muslims, tribe versus not tribe. So I kind of got that impression, but it wasn't explicitly mentioned.
It can be, but it's not. Yeah, it's not clear.
If you're affected with death on a journey, then if you are in doubt with their testimony, keep them after prayer and let them testify under oath by saying, "By God, we would never sell our testimony for any price, even in the favor of a close relative, nor withhold the testimony of God. Otherwise, we would be surely sinners." So let them make this oath.
Yeah.
تحسبونها من بعد الصلاة فيقسمان بالله
إن ارتبتم, if you doubt them.
Yeah, so we do not exchange with it a price, even if he was a relative, and we do not conceal the testimony for ولا نكتم شهادة الله.
And we do not conceal the testimony of
God.
Allah.
And indeed, if we are, then we have surely been of the sinners.
Yeah.
So this is an oath for them to say, to swear by God.
Yeah.
And we saw previously in the previous verse talking about oaths. So there are oaths that you take slightly. This is one of the oaths that is very specific and very clear. And God has mentioned exactly what he's going to do to the people who break this type of oath.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt whatsoever whether this is right or wrong. Powerful.
فإن عثر على أنهما استحقا إثما فآخران يقومان مقامهما من الذين استحق عليهم الأوليان فيقسمان بالله لشهادتنا أحق من شهادتهما وما اعتدينا إنا إذا لمن الظالمين.
This is an interesting phrase.
Yeah.
Because it's saying, so if it has been discovered that on the two they were guilty, then of the sin, they lied, they broke their oaths. So then let two others stand in their place from those who have a lawful right over them, over the former two, so that they may both swear by God, surely our testimony is truer than their testimony, and we have not transgressed. And indeed, if we had, then surely we would have been one of the wrongdoers.
Yeah.
So this is a bit interesting. Saying if the first two testimonies were proven to be unlawful or not true, then get two others. It's creating
the two others should be the closest. So فآخران يقومان مقامهما من الذين استحق عليهم الأولين.
From those who have the lawful right over them,
Yeah.
from the former two.
Yeah. So like closer or.
Yeah, or have more right to
Yeah.
the case, to the person, to the relative. It's interesting that
To the inheritance, I think.
yeah.
Like those who will take part of the
Yeah.
inheritance.
So it kind of sounds like 4 is a specific number, because if the first two fail, then somehow the second two won't fail after them.
Yeah.
I don't know if it ends here, but it's
I
interesting
think
that there's a
this is
redundancy.
this is the last verse of the section, so.
There's 2 more verses. 108 and 109. Oh, 108, one more verse. All right, let's read the last verse and then decide.
Yeah, only one. Yeah.
ذلك أدنى أن يأتوا بالشهادة على وجهها أو يخافوا أن ترد أيمان بعد أيمانهم واتقوا الله واسمعوا والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين.
Yeah, so here we see the explanation of it. Why is this the case? That is because it is closer that is because it will cause them to be closer towards giving their testimony in its true form, or they would fear that they would be refuted their oaths from after they've sworn their oaths. So be mindful of God and listen. God does not guide a people that are defiantly disobedient. So the reason for the 2 men followed by 2 men is because this process, this model, will bring forth the truth and will cause people to be honest, because you never know how it's going to roll out, and this is the best way to do it forward. It just seems to be a model that works. I don't fully understand why, but it seems to be having 2 witnesses and then having 2 witnesses watch over them creates a model that is fair. Because the second 2 witnesses only benefit if the first 2 witnesses lie. So the first 2 witnesses are really incentivized not to lie, because then there's consequence. And the 2 witnesses after them are also, like, they're there just as in case. But,
they are close, like they are closer to the person who died, I think. Or they are already deserving of the inheritance.
Yeah. Okay, well, that concludes our session for today. We have one last section left before the end of Al-Ma'idah, which means the supper, the Last Supper. I wonder if we'll hear about the Last Supper in the last section.
I don't know. But actually, Al-Ma'idah is the table.
Yeah, but I heard that is Al-Ma'idah about, let me figure
and
out.
I think it's the name of the chapter is Al-Ma'idah because, as we can see, that there are a lot of verses related to what you can eat and what you cannot eat.
Surah Al-Ma'idah 114, which is coming up. Say, Lord, send us down the table from the food. So it's coming.
It's coming?
Where is it? قال عيسى ibn Maryam, said Jesus, the son of Maryam, God, Lord, bring us down for us a table spread, a ma'idah, from heaven, to be for us a festival for our first and for our last of us, and a sign from you, and provide us with you, and we're the best of providers. So it's coming up.
But it's not the Last Supper. It's Jesus asked God for...
Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to stop us right here and tell you, if you're excited by this conversation and you want to see what it's all about, then it's going to be the next section. So tune in next week and we will go through it with you. As usual, we always end with Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim, which means trusted is the word of God, who's most elevated, most high, and most glorious. And we thank you for joining with us on this journey. We're really enjoying this journey, so we're hoping you're enjoying it with us. We appreciate you. We love you. مع السلامة.
Bye.